Hey, welcome everybody. This is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFoot U. Today I have Gary Hall Jr., the perennial swimmer, diabetes advocate, and he's going to be talking us today. It's National Diabetes Month. And first, I guess, and foremost, welcome, Gary. Great to have you back.
Thanks, Ben. Good to see you again.
Yep. You've been powering through the pandemic, a lot of travel, a lot of speaking engagements. I know you do a lot of advocacy. I think this is a good time to talk about burnout vis-a-vis diabetes. You're obviously committed to advancing the cause of access, insurance access, activity access. How do we dial into that mode of thinking and yet take care of ourselves at the same time? Because travel is demanding. There's still new variants of the virus.
Sure. Self-care is a thing that's talked about more today than probably ever before throughout the history of humankind. And so being able to listen to your body is great. And you hear so many people encourage that, from yoga instructors, professional athletes, to everything in between. They're medical professionals. But what do we do, right, when that burnout surfaces and boils over? We do reach that point of exhaustion. Do we have the capacity to scale back, to allow ourselves a few days off, and the answer a lot of times is no. So even if we are listening to our body and identifying, I'm exhausted, I'm pushing it too hard, I know I'm pushing it too hard, we still do it anyway, and we still hit that wall inevitably because our body just won't let us, the mind, take it too far, right? And so, I traveling. I just, came down with a nasty flu, I was out for about a week, and it was just a case of that. I had been working too hard for too long.
Do you find that you're able to almost prognosticate it by looking at your sugar levels, or that is not necessarily even going hand in hand?
It does. It stutter steps. And so oftentimes there may be a recognition like, hey, my blood sugar levels are wonky. They're all over the place. And I'm frustrated with it. And then, within, 12 hours to 24 hours, you start feeling sick, right? And then you say, oh, that explains the blood sugars, and that explains the irritability and the frustration of having blood sugars all over the place. So that just comes with the territory of having diabetes and getting sick just like anybody else. It's just one more thing to juggle.
Do you find that you've come across any good travel tips, because you've been doing it a long time, about travel health with diabetes, whether it be walking around at the airport versus sitting, and obviously we got to check in with our families, usually it's the before and after, we got to coordinate rides, coordinate meetings.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've done to sort of decompress or take advantage of the waiting for the 3-hour delayed flight and trying to, be either more mindful or more physical or just decompress?
Be vigilant. This is really a time in the days of travel, family holidays, Thanksgiving's coming up, and just be vigilant, because we don't think about it. We're catching a flight, but the amount of exercise, hauling luggage in and out of the car, getting up early outside of, disrupting your schedule, that's exercise, loading the bags, and hoofing it. Some of these airports, you walk a mile and a half to your gate, and the security checkpoint, it's jumping through hoops. And so that's a lot of exercise that people don't really account for or aren't thinking. They're just thinking, I'm getting to my flight. Also, in addition to the physical activity expenditure, you also have stress. It is stressful. No matter how much you've done it, a little bit of worry about whether we're going to find the parking spot. We've taken 3 laps around the parking garage and haven't, there's something traffic. Am I going to get to the gate on time? There's always some stress involved in the process as well, and so that sends blood sugars up through the roof. Your meals, you're eating airport food, not always the healthiest, and you don't have that much time. You might only have a half hour to get to the gate, so you're making choices that may not have the widest range of health benefits, and so those are major things. And then you are traveling sometimes for a long period of time, and tired, you're tired, and so all of these things kind of add up to something that it really requires greater care for someone with diabetes traveling.
What are some of the things that you think with your advocacy, other than highlighting it, and I know you've been at congressional hearings and had a chance to testify, what do you think came of those meetings afterwards that was able to be pushed forward and highlighted?
A lot of my involvement in Capitol Hill was alongside JDRF. And they are a nonpartisan group. Diabetes affects both red and blue. So we'd go from a Democrat to a Republican and be received, in a friendly way, because everybody today is touched by diabetes. They have a loved one that has diabetes, and so it was neat to be able to be in that position, very unique position I had, to be able to work with both sides. And so what that push was to secure the special diabetes program funding. That's the federal funding to the tune of about $150 million a year that advances really, really, really important diabetes research. And so any disruption of that funding, which really, when you look at the national budget, $150 million a year for this disease that affects so many people. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but we got to make sure, we got to fight for it every time that and renew that bill that passes that carries that protection. So that was the ultimate outcome, but also through an experience like that, and some of my trips to Washington D.C. were for the Children's Congress, which takes 2 delegates from each state, kids with diabetes, and brings them to Capitol Hill to talk about what it's like living with diabetes. That's it. The friendships that you make out of that. I attended the very first Children's Congress for JDRF back in 1999, just 3 months after I was diagnosed. And so those kids are grown up now. And so now I go to a conference and I'm meeting kids that show me a picture of us together when they were just knee-high, and so it's neat to see that comeuppance and the next generation of people that are passionate advocates continuing this pursuit of finding a cure and providing better treatment and services and therapies for those of us that do have the disease and are living with it. It's really neat to see. And so out of all of the diabetes advocacy, some of the friendships is what I cherish the most.
Well, I think that's important because I think that that exchange creates positive energy, and there's, we could go on all day about socialization and how having friendships and family and support, how that affects our well-being. I mean, literally, we get hormones and beta endorphins that are created when we have positive interactions. And it's just the same when let's say I have a patient that I know is going to be kind of a stickler. I mean, my adrenaline glands are secreting and stress hormones pervade my body. So it really is, there's definitely that symbiotic relationship with people that are working together. In the technology realm, you are, in some realms, have struck me as a tech guy, and in some realms, a very simple guy. In the world of diabetes technology, where do you fall? Do you do the continuous glucose monitoring? Do you prefer the old school finger stick? What is your sort of way that you handle your diabetes?
Yeah, so right now I rely on a continuous glucose monitoring device. It's a wearable. Mine is Dexcom, and I absolutely love it. It was the biggest game changer in diabetes management for me through the many years that I've been taking care of this condition. And so, yeah, that Dexcom, it just feeds my blood glucose readings to my phone with an update every minute. So I'm able to see if it's trending up or trending down. I'm able to head off low blood sugars before I'm in an emergency situation, and high blood sugars so that they're not sustained high for very long. So that's the big one. And the other company that's out there is Abbott. The two of them yeah. And part of the struggle is that everybody knows that this device gets better results in diabetes management. And if you look at the costs of complications of poorly managed diabetes, the kidney failure and lower limb amputation and blindness and nerve damage, and the list goes on and on. It's incredible to me that insurance companies are fighting to not have this covered, because eventually they're going to be on the hook down the road for all the complications that stem from less managed diabetes. So it's amazing to me that doctors still have to put up the fight on behalf of the patient. They've got to allocate time. They're already overworked staff to be dealing with insurance companies and convincing them that little Johnny or Susie needs a continuous glucose monitoring device. So I'd like to see that streamlined a little bit better. A lot of things in healthcare that could be streamlined a little bit better. But
I mean, just to double up on that point, the body in general, and when we have homeostasis, whether it be managing your sugar, managing, I see, and complications sometimes from vascular disease or diabetes with wounds, when it's the up down of your regulatory hormones and levels of different things that are important for healing, even if you can get it back to a level, but you're going up like this as opposed to smaller oscillations, we both know who's going to do better long term, both with staying out of the hospital and then longevity, just your life cycle. And I've even gotten to a point where, and I'm pre-diabetic, where I'm looking more carefully at, I had a few slices of pizza last night, but like, I'm not necessarily having a glass of wine. I'm not necessarily having dessert. I'm managing the caloric intake, which, I used to, eat a little bit more and just, all that processing, it's oxidation. So it's not helping, use what you need, not to go into over surplus. And I think that's, that gets back to weight control as well. Insofar as where do you think, other than some of the glucose monitoring, that we need to go with access to physical activity in areas that you intimately now, Southern California? How would you say the state of it is there for kids, let's say, that aren't going to the private schools, that aren't in the better zip codes for school zones, for access to a pool if they're overweight, access to basic running programs, Girls on the Run? What are you seeing in your communities?
Well, there is limited access. There are not enough facilities in this country to accommodate the need for physical activity. And again, the cite costs, and municipal planning and stuff like that. You got an acre of property in Los Angeles. You could put up a high rise or condominiums or commercial space, or you collect office rents through the roof, or you put a play space. What are developers? You have to provide some incentives for developers, city planners, to make room for this space. And so you really have to dip into data, right? And that validates this commitment to sport and physical activity, because the costs toward, and again, managing diabetes and obesity are tremendous. So if we can just take a sliver of those expenses and apply them to parks and sustainability of parks and recreation space but another thing that needs to be considered, and this has certainly been highlighted in more recent years through athletes like Simone Biles, and obviously the pandemic brought a lot of light on mental health and what does physical activity do for our mental health. It's undeniable. Data is clear that someone that exercises is healthier and happier mentally, and so we need to take that into consideration. But there is a fight on our hands to figure out how to create more facility space. There's people in Los Angeles that there's Olympians, Olympic level swimmers that cannot find pool space in Southern California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is supposed to be, land of the water and sea, surf and sun and pools everywhere. But in terms of community access to swimming pools, you've got a lot of people have to drive a very long way.
That's really startling to hear. I know that in successful Olympic years, like in the 80s, there was a lot of capitalization that occurred in your area with track cycling, and they had track development programs. Are there any pool programs that you're doing or that you have involvement with that are along those lines to try, with the access and?
So I have no real affiliation with this organization. Just I have incredible admiration for what it has achieved, and it dates back to the 1984 Olympic Games. And Peter Ueberroth there's only 3 Olympic Games in the history of Olympics that made a profit, and 1984 was, I think, the first. And there was a surplus of, close to, I think, $200 million or something like that, 200 million dollars or something like that. And it created a legacy foundation, the LA 84 Foundation. And what that program has done has funded every single youth sport in Southern California. Every sport, every single sport without exception. They've broadened access so that it isn't just rich people that have access to play sport. They have included girls and all the letters and everything in between, and just an incredible dynamic organization that's done so much to help youth get involved in sport. And so Renata Simrel heads that organization. And they continue, and they're working closely with the LA 28 there, right? So with the Olympics coming back now to the United States, the last time they were held here was in 1996. 2028, they're going to be back in LA, and so that organization is really promoting sport and physical activity, and so we in Los Angeles have this tremendous upsweep of interest in sport and sport development and sport programs. It's always been there. It's always been there. Look at the number of colleges in this city. Look at the number of professional teams, and so it is a culture that is obsessed in health and wellness and physical activity. So even if you aren't going to Clippers or Lakers games or whoever else, Kings, a lot of the population are going for bike rides and hikes and are out at the beach and surfing and skiing up in Big Bear. And so it really is kind of a unique place that we are kind of doing a better job than a lot of other places. There's a lot more resources, a lot more people that are on board.
Have you had one, other than getting run down and having to manage your sugar directly, any ongoing complications from your type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, I am fortunate that I do not have complications to speak of. Just had but I'm also on top of it. You know, I had an eye exam just less than 2 weeks ago, and so yeah, I you know, stay on top of it. You know, if you catch things early.
What are your top 2 or 3? I know you like to surf when the tide is right. What are your top 2 or 3 go-tos of physical activity that are accessible for you?
Yeah, I'm fortunate in some regards that I'm very physically active in the work that I do. So I'm in the pool working with kids and swimming with them constantly, kind of critiquing and coaching and teaching swimming lessons and stuff like that. So that is a good base. What I like to do for fun is play tennis and go surfing outside of that. So between that and household chores, a little bit of push and broom every once in a while, I think I'm getting enough exercise.
Do you take the stairs or the escalator if you're not late? Just random question.
You know, I like stairs. You know, if I'm in a parking garage, I take stairs. You know, and I'm impatient, and I don't like enclosed spaces that much. So.
Yeah, I'm the same to a degree. Sometimes I feel like I get on the escalator, get off the plane, and I just want to get on the doggone shuttle to get out because I brought a carry-on, and then it's without fail. There's 2 people at the end that just, and you don't want to be too aggressive and say, "Can you get out of my way so you can catch the little tram to get to the main airport?" And you're just, oh, another 15 minutes. It's midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That stress I
I'm
was
gonna give you,
talking about with travel. So
yeah.
you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about.
going to give you last words, Gary. Let's direct it this way to give people some positivity. Suppose you know you've had some surgery, you've had spinal fusion, or you've had some cancer, or you've just been diagnosed with diabetes. What and you had to wrestle with this when you got diagnosed. It was I'm sure your whole world, you know, and all the work you put into swimming. What's your words to tell people to get them out of that negative space and into the light?
One, that it's okay to be in the negative space. Let's start there, right? So with a diagnosis or anything that you just rattled off, you're messed up if you aren't depressed about that kind of stuff, right? Like you're told you have cancer, you know, or a life-threatening condition. Yeah, this is a natural reaction. Sadness is not necessarily depression, you know, and that sadness will extend for, understandably, a long period of time. A lot of worry attached to that, and additional stress and stuff like that. That's will make you feel sad, deflated, at the very least, depressed. It's okay to feel depressed about that kind of stuff. So, one, let's start there, that it's okay to be feeling that way. And then 2 is small steps, and you hear it over and over again. You just put one foot in front of the other, right? And you know, you go through the phases of grief, which includes anger and depression and or sadness, or like I forget the whole list, but you know, you're going to go through these phases where you're going, why me? And even privately, right? You don't have to post on social media and this kind of thing, but you question, why me? Why now? You know, and a lot more questioning on the grander purpose of our existence here and that type of stuff. So it's a process, and it takes time to get through the process and allow yourself the time. Not just that you're feeling these things, but that it's going to take some time to get through it. Keep doing what you can do. That's the putting the small steps, stringing small steps together. You know, you can finish a marathon with really little steps.
I really appreciate the time that you put in today, not just for National Diabetes Month, but strong messages for challenging times. We're still in some challenging times here, and it's always good to hear from somebody that's been through it and got to the light on the end of the tunnel. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thanks for having me on, Ben. Good to see
All
you.
right.